Welcome back, book sniffers, and you find me at one of the most iconic parish churches in the whole of England. This is Little Snoring in Norfolk. It's quite remote here, it's very flat, and it's got its detached round tower there. And if I come this way, you just see the approach to it is just so wonderful, which is why it's quietly famous in kind of church hunting circles. You just come round the corner, the village is just down that way. You come round the corner and there it is. It's just beautiful. There's a couple of church crawlers, so I'll just wait for them and then we'll discuss this book. In the Pilgrims book club, we have been reading Rosanna Pike's A Little Trickerie, which is why I'm here in Norfolk. So this is set in the late medieval period, at the turn of the reign of Richard III, then going into Henry VII, who obviously defeated him at the Battle of Bosworth and brought to an end, in a way, the Wars of the Roses, which had rumbled on for generations. But rather than looking at high society, this book looks at people who are often forgotten in commentaries on English history. A vagabond, or a set of vagabonds, people who were homeless, who had no set place where they lived and were therefore sort of shunned by society. They were outside the system. And this looks at a relationship between a character called Tib and Ivo. And Tib in particular is such a compelling character, and I really enjoyed this. I don't want to spoil it, but I would say it's a novel that people who really enjoy character-based narrative, like it really sets the scene of their personalities and the relationships between the characters. I wouldn't say that it dives deep into the history of late medieval England that much, say as much as a Wolf Hall, for example, as a historical novel where you really feel totally centred in that world. It's more about character, it's more about plot, and it really drags you through. There's a lot of drama. You're required to use your imagination a lot, and therefore I'm not surprised it is selling very, very well. I think most people in the book club have really enjoyed it, found it compelling. It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts, whether you agree with me or not. As I say, I want to avoid the spoilers. I do want to show you around this church, and the reason why, let's just take a walk down the church path, is because yesterday me and Mona went on a walk, Mona is our dog, along the Norfolk coast, whilst my partner Agat went to see Mariah Carey at Sandringham. And that was the marshland where the main characters in this book, Tib and Ivo, meet. And you can really see here in some of the footage that I'm going to overlay the atmosphere in which they would have met, the landscape. It talks about them finding oysters on that shoreline, and it really is hauntingly beautiful. I love that marshy, flat landscape. There are some unbelievable churches there. And actually, Tib and Ivo use the churches because they actually break into them. They take some of the communion bread and the wine and other treats that are on offer in the church. And maybe they sneak through doors like this to get in. But actually, I think it's the priest doors that they try to get in. So I'll show you one of those. But if you haven't ever visited a medieval church, let's take a look at this one. So this is the Church of St. Andrew, and you'll see this round tower here. The round towers are particularly famous in this part of the country, in East Anglia, in Norfolk and in Suffolk. And in fact, I think there's only half a dozen or so outside of East Anglia. Some people think they were defensive. I don't think that's true. I don't think there's any evidence for that. Why they exist might be something to do with the building materials. Maybe it's easier to make this round structure with the flint work that you will see rather than some of the thick stone that you get in other regions. The stone, rarer here, often had to be imported in from other regions. This tower probably dates from the very final years of Saxon England before the Normans arrived in 1066 or just after. It's sort of, the literature seems to settle on that view. There are, however, Norman features, and what we think was that there was actually a church that extended outwards here in a different direction, and then it's been rebuilt much later. So let's take a look inside. First things first, I'll take my hat off, otherwise I'll get told off for having a hat on in church. You will see here in the porch this quite beautiful Norman work on the door, the surround there. Clearly that's been reintegrated, I would say, from an older church as this has been rebuilt. And we'll go in through the old door, take a look inside. Off we go. Here we are. So this was actually used, I just read, as a base for the RAF during the Second World War. You'd have had Hurricanes and Spitfires on the fields outside. It's very flat in East Anglia. And there is actually a memorial to that time here, very simple, very brief. And it's obviously important to remember that history. The chancel has a real impact. I think it's due to these lancet windows, probably from the 13th century. The light here is just wonderful, and I love touches like this. The old, little organ there. It's really beautiful. It's things like that in churches that I find so romantic. And also the kneelers, these cushions, they're just such beautiful designs. Some people are really into these. I know someone called Luke Hall, who actually is a designer, clothing designer, and also a great painter, and he is so inspired by these. They're just great. Elsewhere, there's some 17th century woodwork. This pulpit, for example. It looks like there's a font there. I'm not quite sure how old that is. Definitely medieval, for sure. Looks quite early to me, actually. But maybe I'll have a look and a read about that. I wouldn't say there's any fireworks inside in terms of historical detail. There's a royal coat of arms up there, 1686, so just before the Glorious Revolution, so worthy of note. But really, this is just a place to soak in the atmosphere. And I want to show you this because this is exactly the type of place that, Tib and Ivo would have snuck into and taken really what they could. And, you have a great deal of sympathy for them in the book. And I'm looking forward to speaking with Rosanna Pike about where that idea came for the book. It actually doesn't look like there is a priest's door here. So if we just imagine a little door kind of into the chancel area, I'll try and find one on a church and show you, or at least a photo. That's where in the book, they say it's often unlocked and they would have got in. So now I'm going to go to Walsingham, which is a pilgrimage centre in this part of the country. Maybe we can imagine Tib and Ivo walking through there on their wanders across the country. And I will try and finish this little video with some images from there, and I'll do a voiceover. Probably won't do a YouTube video there because I'm not sure if it's appropriate. Like I won't do a talking piece, but I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit of what the world that Tib and Ivo would have been in. And also St Andrews here. What a beautiful place. Now to Walsingham, known as England's Nazareth. In 1061, a Lady Richeldis experienced Marian visions here, leading her to build a replica of the Holy House of Nazareth on English soil. It became one of the great sites of pilgrimage in medieval England until the priory and shrine were dissolved in 1538. Now the east window stands as an iconic memory to the religious complex that once formed the devotional centre of Walsingham. There is a famous Anglican shrine in Walsingham and an Orthodox chapel, as well as another one in a nearby village. And 1 mile from Walsingham Along the Holy Mile is the Slipper Chapel. Now, this is quite special, a restored medieval wayside chapel. And in 2015, Pope Francis actually nominated this building as a minor basilica. You can see that there are the usual Catholic relics inside, and people actually slip off their shoes and walk the way back to Walsingham along this mile route.